All right, so we've talked a little bit about building your brand identity on this channel so many times, but it bears worth in revisiting, and especially with somebody that is near and dear to my heart in Terry Pappy. And Terry's got a lot of insights and something that will help resonate with you to bring out the 1000% you in you. So that way you can get that vibe that attracts your tribe. So, we're going to be talking about how to build your brand identity from scratch in today's episode. Before we do jump into that, I of course want to give a big shout out to the fine folks over at Author Brand Kits. Should you have an author website? Well, absolutely. If you'd like a done for you option, have a look at Author Brand Kits. My assistant runs this service. She's fantastic, and she handles it all for you. From email to WordPress and so much more. Don't sleep on this, folks. Go over to dalelinks.com/ABK to take 25% off for a limited time. Terry Pappy. Oh, let me tell you how much I enjoy this lady. Every single time that we get together, we usually book, I'd say, half hour, and then about 2 hours later, we're done chatting. So this is no exception, although I'm going to try to keep it dialed in. Terry Pappy is the author of 6 books on creativity and business development. She's an award-winning writer, a designer, and creative workshop leader. She has worked with a diverse clientele. Take note here, folks, including major brands such as, hold Terry's beer, IBM, Sprint, Marriott International, and American Suzuki, as well as companies on the rise from the family-owned private business to solo entrepreneur expert. I would like to welcome to the show, Terry Pappy. What's going on? It's great to have you. How you feeling?
Hey, what's going on, my friend? It's great to be here. And look, we get to hang out again. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know about the ooh part, but I'll run with it. I'll run with it. So it's really, really great to have you on here finally. I was a 2-time guest on your show, and as soon as the first time we chatted, I was like, I got to have this gal on here, and I just had to figure out a time and a way to get you on. And you have some great insights on your channel on YouTube, which people need to go to right now. Find it at
YouTubeterry.com. That's right.
It's YouTubeterry.com.
That's right.
So
Terry
folks,
with a Y.
go over there. Subscribe to her channel. She's dropping some serious great 411 that's going to help I like it. When I watch your videos, I don't feel like I'm being lorded down upon. Like you go to like a self-help type clinic, and there's that person on stage and they seem greater than you. I feel like I'm having a conversation with a friend, and you're great in that aspect. So folks, go subscribe, YouTubeterry.com. And if you're watching this right now on the live play or the replay, please load us up with some questions inside the comments. I'm going to be a little selfish though, Terry. I think I'm going to go ahead and jump into my questions. So without any further ado, let's get into those questions. Briefly explain, what is a brand? What does that mean to you? And why do authors need a brand?
It's the ultimate differentiator because there's only one us, right? So there are millions of authors, self-published and, traditionally published, at all stages, all genres. They're doing different things with their books, they're whatever, right? So what makes one different from the next? Well, it's the individual. And that's why I love focusing on personal branding, because it is the ultimate differentiator. So just creating a brand that's more of a visual way to show up and communicate and all those touch points between you and your prospective audience, as well as your subscribers and readers, there's always an added layer. And that's what people are really looking for today, is that real connection. They want to be kind of like an insider into your world, your creative process, as well as, what you're doing to get your mission, your message out there into the world.
Isn't it enough that we just write the books and just put it out there? Isn't that brand enough for people?
Yeah, if you just want to create something that's going to collect dust on somebody's shelf and be forgotten, and when it's done, yeah, that's fine. I mean, when I wrote some of my first books, because I had different intentions back then. I mean, my first book was a memoir about my husband who had passed away and everything we went through on his cancer journey. And it was more a project of love
Yeah.
because when he passed away, I wanted to read a love story. I didn't want to read about the 7 stages of grief and how to deal with a young widow and all these things, because I was 42 when he passed away. But I felt like I lived a love story, and I wanted to go out and find one, and I couldn't find one. So I took his journal entries and I wrote our story and combined them together. And then I wrote 14 days, because he only had 14 entries in his journal. So we kind of co-wrote it. But for me, that was more something that was personal to me. And I wanted to take it to its final destination of being a book in print, available on Amazon, that like official. But was I trying to build a business with it? Was I trying to create a platform with it? Was I trying to build my personal brand with it? No. So there's nothing wrong with just creating a beautiful asset that's an expression of your ideas, your experiences, your thoughts, and putting it in book form, whether it's a Kindle, whether it's an ebook, whether it's something in a hardback that you either self-publish or get a traditional publisher to help you with. It doesn't matter. You're creating, and that is the most important part.
How do you know when it's right? I mean, because there's sometimes some folks will come to me and they go, well, I just simply want to publish things, but then they'll come back and go, I didn't sell anything. What did I do wrong? Do you think there might be a mismatch, or are they misled in some capacity?
Well, that's kind of two questions there, because if they're not selling something, then that was their intention for writing the book. So if their intention for writing the book is to sell something, then go find something that's going to make you more money, because it takes a lot to make sufficient dollars. Believe me, my royalty checks are, something point dot dot. That's just like, $10, 39 cents for, because you just don't make money on individual book sales. Now, I work with people who have learned how to platform with their books. So it's part of a revenue stream, such as speakers, professional speakers who go and do a keynote address. Well, if they're teaching on a particular topic like sales techniques, they may have a book that's out and say, all right, well, as they're negotiating the contract, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, if you agree to buy a copy of my book for every attendee, so if there's 1,000 attendees, you can sell 1,000 books, and they get put on the seats. And, so that's a more fuller experience for the attendee. And it can help negotiate a deal where they're not necessarily, paying more for the keynote, but they're balancing it out because they feel like they're getting more value.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And you're complete when you're done. Move on, do something else. Create, create, create. Never stop creating.
I love it. I love it. All right. So I'm going to ask you a popular question, and it's for good reason, because obviously what we end up producing, what we end up writing, what we end up publishing is going to be compartmentalized. It's going to be put into something, into a slot of some sort. So this popular question is, what niche should I publish in?
So I guess the question begs for another question.
Okay.
Right? So let's talk about you, Dale.
Okay.
How did you decide your niche? Because you didn't start out being self-publishing with Dale, right? You were doing other things. And what shifted? What made you pick this new niche?
For me, I think it originally started out as scratching an itch. I was heavily into health and fitness, and I was challenged to do so. And when I wrote that book, I was like, wow, that was fun. That was gratifying. And then I realized that I actually found something that was profitable, but in due time, it became almost like a burden to me. Like I was like, oh man, I'm kind of tired of telling people about how to do push-ups. Like there's only so many times you can, like, all right, like seriously, just go buy that other book. I don't need to write another book to tell you how to do another squat. Just go buy that one. We're done. I got burnt out at that point. And thankfully, during that evolution of me falling out of love with fitness, I fell head over and heels in love with this whole self-publishing business. And more importantly, when I started to show people how to do this, that I transitioned over to there. So yeah, it didn't necessarily start where it has ended right here. And it's obviously not even ended for that sake.
No,
I mean, who knows what it looks like in 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll be onto something else like, horticulture or something. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
What was it about self-publishing that really lit you up?
Because I felt almost like when I got into this business, I'm nobody special. Now, my mother would probably make the argument, everybody's special, everybody's unique, but I feel like I'm nobody special. But I was able to go and break into a niche that is hyper competitive and to be at the top of the food chain. Like I was at the top of these lists, just crushing it among all these giants in the fitness industry. And for me to have achieved that, I was like, wow, that's really cool. And it's almost like getting a shiny new toy. Like, I wanted to show people how to do it too, because I wanted them to feel that same thing I felt. And I felt like if I'm just like everybody else, all right, then I would like to hand off this information to them. So when I handed off information and I saw people were using it and becoming successful with it, it was like a drug. It felt good.
Yeah, you really hit something. Well, what I know of you and what I've experienced of you is that you're a quintessential teacher. So you could spin the wheel of fortune and pretty much pick any topic and you'd be amazing teaching it.
Thank you.
Because you throw your whole self into it, and that is your personal brand.
Got you. So let's see if we can like dial this in for somebody that's watching this, that's confused on the direction they should go. What would you recommend as a best first step?
If they haven't started writing yet, or where are they in the journey? Because that's a big question for me to just kind of throw a dart
We'll
at.
say brand new, hasn't wrote a single word.
Okay, so somebody who is an aspiring / emerging self-publishing author.
Yeah.
The first question I would ask is, why do you want to write a book?
Okay.
And get like super clear on your intention.
Yeah.
And I would also consider looking at what is it about, something that you said just a minute ago about I'm nobody special. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way, especially when we're bombarded with so many overtly displayed successful people, what we interpret. Remember, we're interpreted. That's our perception.
Yeah.
When behind the scenes, we've heard enough Hollywood stories to know that the real behind the scenes is usually not a happy scene.
Right.
So you kind of have to mature up and say, all right, you know what? I'm just going to do my thing. And this is why I love, again, personal branding and bringing out that 1000% you. I think that the more that you try to, use other people's templates or follow somebody else's process, because everybody's coming up with their own, methodology. And it's actually one of the things I coach my clients on, which is ironic. But it's a way for us to identify what it is we're doing, who we're doing it for, and helping facilitate their journey. Just like what you've done. You've figured out, okay, I slogged through this journey, figured out how to do self-publishing on my own. And by delving in and just really doing the research and the homework, meeting people, attracting people to me so I could learn and be an expert in this because I want to do a good job. That again is your personal brand. So I hope that your audience is hearing your example is a demonstration of personal brand. It's something very subtle. It's something that's very quiet. But when you start distinguishing it, and that always starts with your intention, when you have the right intention, and the intention is really about not in order to make money, in order to get more attention, in order to, right? It should be, what do I want to create? What am I like super jazzed about? What am I pissed off about? What am I a contrarian about? Like, I don't agree with that, mode of thinking. I think it should be done this way, and I'm going to write about that. So that's when we really can connect with our inner writer, whether we're hiring a ghostwriter to write it for us or whether we're doing it ourselves. When we get connected to that inner voice, that muse, that creative muse, where the idea, the execution of the book can be done by anybody, whether it's you or someone else. Everybody gets hung up, well, I have to write it. But no, there are great ghostwriters out there that will actually take your data that's up here and in your heart, and they'll be able to translate that into a wonderful piece of work that is marketable. And what I mean by marketable is it's easy for people to read and actually get value out of.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll stop there and see if I kind of like got you started on the answer to that question.
Yeah, you did really well. It helps etch it out, because I think sometimes when people become overwhelmed, they see the world of self-publishing and they will watch my 550 plus videos and they still say, what niche should I publish in? And the problem is, I think they become overwhelmed, and I think you gave the best practical first steps. And
yeah, it's
to
really
be clear,
about intention.
you don't have to be married to the first thing that you do. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because here's the thing, and this is what I love about creativity and the creative journey, is it's constantly evolving. Because as we're moving along that journey, whether we're self-employed or whether it's a side hustle or whether we're fully employed working for the man and we just want to do this on the side for fun, it doesn't matter. It's still an expression of you, right? So when you go for that heart, that passion, that idea, what's in your head, and get it out there, it's an expression of an opinion. And let me tell you what, your opinion, the more, and this is again ties into personal branding, the more you're honest about your position, the more you're honest about your humbleness in not knowing the answer, but just sharing your opinion, sharing your experience, which you do a lot of, right? You come and you offer as many sides as possible, but it's still your perspective, your experience. And the people that are aligning with that are the ones that are following you, loving your stuff, buying your stuff, telling everybody else about what you're doing, because you're really coming from pure Dale, right?
Yeah.
And so when you have a situation where you're really passionate about something and you want to move it forward, you want to get it out, like it's hurting you to be stuffed inside, think of stay anchored in that versus, oh, if I write a book about round cat boxes for those special cat owners who like certain kinds of litter, that's a book, that's a really great niche. I know I can make money. And then you go and you do that. Well, the whole heart and soul is out of it because it's a manipulation. You're doing it in order to achieve some sort of outcome. And there are a lot of people out there who have done that exact thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I was talking to, I can't remember, it was one of my colleagues, and he was making a comment about someone who is taking on a new writing project. And he said, it's so nice to have a topic that's not a platform builder, like a nonfiction business how-to book, that isn't about helping someone build their platform, like here's 10 tips on how to be a great leader, or, I mean, just on and on. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you see what I'm saying? This is really because when you approach it from that standpoint, not only is there more heart and passion behind the project, which really, believe me, because if you're writing it yourself, it's a labor of love and it is a lot of work to write a book.
It sure is.
And it'll help you stay committed. It'll help you stay in love with it, that as well as discipline doing it. But it'll also be something you can really feel great about when it's done. And let me tell you, if it comes from that heart and head place, your idea, and you own it, you've peed on that tree, that is your tree, that is your thing, right? This is what you're about and what you're up to, and you're going to stand by that regardless of what kind of blowback you get. You will attract the people that feel the same way or are begging for someone to give oxygen to that perspective. And that's what's beautiful, because the more polarizing, I'm not talking about doing something radical, of course not, that doesn't make sense. You don't want to get outliers, right? You want to attract people who feel similarly. And that's why really being yourself is so much more in demand now in this new economy, because we are moving into a new economy. So many things are different. And with everything we've been through with the pandemic and are still going through, people are yearning for relationships where they really can build true trust, because they want more intimacy. They want more collaboration. They want more of a human experience. And in so doing, that makes their lives richer. So if you can do that by writing about it in a book that really comes from your heart and your ideas, then that's a huge gift to the world to make that available.
Yeah, absolutely. I by the way, folks, disclaimer, Terry wasn't telling you to actually go pee on a tree.
it's a great metaphor to, kind of express how I feel about that, owning your stuff.
But I really do need to talk to you about something. Is this a little bit of an intervention? Terry, you're not very good at math. Just going to tell you this right now. Sorry, okay. You're great at brand building and such and all that. But what do you mean? What does being 1000% you mean anyways? Because come on, 100% wasn't enough?
Google 1000% and it'll explain it to you.
Gotcha.
It's actually an expression that's been used quite a bit to emphasize over-enthusiastic support of an idea.
Nice.
It's that simple.
Excellent. Like,
I struggle with math. That was never my strong suit.
She was like, "This is not in the show notes. What he's talking about? My horrible math skills."
I know you know me, Dale, but I mean, I didn't know about my math challenge.
So being 1000% you, that's really something that you talk a lot about over on your YouTube channel, over at youtubeterry.com. Plug. Share a little bit more about what that means. I mean, you've kind of danced around a little bit about being you as part of your brand, but what does that mean, being 1000% you?
Yeah, well, as I said in the beginning, it's the ultimate differentiator, right? Okay. So, and I've been in business just by myself, solopreneur, shout out to all my solopreneurs. Love you guys. And that's where my passion comes from, right? Like I feel like I'm an advocate for the solopreneur lifestyle, right? And so as I've gone through business, I started trying to survive, right? I got laid off of my last corporate job with Marriott. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing. So I was building websites, I was writing copy, I was designing logos, I was doing strategies, right? So everything I was doing. Yeah. And so people were just kind of like hiring me as a, just a vendor or a contractor, or, hiring me to do a thing, like deliver this thing.
Yeah.
And over time, I started developing my own, awareness around what was really missing. They'd come to me and they'd ask, all right, I need a website. And I'd be like, okay, great, I can do that, but why? So I started asking a lot of why. I started doing a lot of qualitative research. And I realized that pretty much every one of my clients really didn't understand who their customer was. I'm like, okay, so if you want me to create all this stuff and yet you are giving me bad information about your customer, why, it just didn't make sense. So I started making my business about getting better understanding from my client and then translating that into amazing, marketing and collateral and experiences as well, because I'm big into CX, customer experience. And then by having those two in place, you have excellent customer relationships, which again speaks to the CX. So the three of those together was like what I was about, like better understanding of your customer, better communicating, more professional, more consistent brand, and then better relationships. So you get advocacy, you get longer term engagements with your clients. And that's where I came up with the name of my business, Better 3. Did I start with that in the beginning? No. Again, this speaks back to my journey. Like as I learned and started getting more confidence in what I was providing and the value I was bringing, I was seeing all these gaps, right? And just going, wow, this is missing here, and this is what I can bring here. And all of a sudden I started developing a really rich offering. And what's interesting is, yes, you can deliver a great solution, great value, but what was really, and this is like a personal moment, what was really interesting that happened probably 2 or 3 years ago, I started noticing that I was still hiding. And what I mean by that is like, I was not giving my own business the love it needed. And there's a lot of people that, struggle with that. They go out and they deliver like crazy to their customers and their audience. And then they're like, oh crap. Meanwhile, I have no videos on my own YouTube channel kind of thing. Right? So that was one thing I was doing. But the other thing I was doing was I was still hiding. I was like the wizard, behind the curtain, pulling all the wires and the levers and everything. Yeah. And all the glitz was happening with my clients. And I don't want to sound braggadocious or arrogant about that. It's like, I was so intent on making them look good that I wasn't taking care of showing up in my truest value. And a lot of that's confidence. A lot of that is realizing your own value, right? And, which is the same as discounting your services and things like, you do things just to get business. I got to get business. I got to survive. Where's the money? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so when this whole, 1000% thing started bubbling up was when I came up with the business of you. And I created a product called the business of you. And I started seeing how I was really pulling in a lot of unique aspects that I mined from my clients. Like, oh, you do this, or oh, you're into curling, or oh, you've climbed Mount Everest, or just something, whatever they did that wasn't necessarily right in their niche or their business, or the typical marketing stuff that all the marketers have told us to do.
Yeah.
That's another episode altogether right there.
Right.
And so I was like, wait a minute, Terry, like turn the mirror on yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so I started seeing that I wasn't really showing me like I could have been. And where I noticed this was, it was actually my boyfriend, Doug, who brought it up. I was like, I think a couple of years ago, I was kind of like in this, like my pipeline had kind of almost gotten empty. And I was like, oh, starting to freak out. Like, oh, I got to get out there, start, getting some new clients and such. So I was freaking out a little bit, right? And he's like, Terry, he says, when people meet you, even if it's virtual, right? Or even get on the phone with you, he said, they fall in love with you. He says, you have to find a way to show them the real you. And he says, you'll get business. He says, your business will be fine. You should never have to worry. And I'm like, oh, it's like that easy,
it's
right?
that simple. And you think to yourself, that doesn't seem right. But yeah. I can say, like, for instance, myself, that's the thing, is when you start to really shine as you are, that's when you'll start to attract those people. A good friend of mine, Anthony Fleischman, puts it this way: your vibe will attract your tribe. And it's so true. I think for you, especially, I said to you a long time ago, I'm like, why aren't you like hugely successful on YouTube right now? I was like, because you've got killer videos, great content, and anytime you get on camera, I love it. So it's just, to me, I think, just even people that have watched you so far. If you're watching this so far and you're vibing with Terry, put in #vibing, because she's fantastic at doing that. And sorry to interrupt you. I thought this would be a good point to kind of maybe even illustrate another point. A good friend of mine, Jeremy Vest, he actually used to work with vidIQ at one point or another. They work with YouTube and such, and it's like a YouTube browser extension, helps out, such like that. That's not an advertisement for them, but he was formerly working with them, and he has helped a veritable who's who on the list of big YouTube content creator, like millions of subscribers. And it was funny, he and I were just sitting and chatting one time, and his YouTube channel just kind of got put on like the side burner. And you'd look over and you'd be like, how is this guy bringing millions of subscribers to other people, but yet he's not doing it for himself? And I don't think he had discovered himself until more recently. He had actually he left vidIQ and found a wonderful job working with Braille skateboards. And is the craziest thing, I never knew this about Jeremy. He's a skater, and the guy's like in his mid-40s. And he built his own ramp in his yard, and like he's really embraced this whole skateboarding thing. So I see this whole new side of him, and I'm like, that's the dude I dig right there. Not the guy that just like tells you about analytics and YouTube and things like that. I was like, that right there, I could watch all the time, because when you see it, it's almost like watching a home improvement show. Even though I'm not like a subcontractor or like, a handyman at best, I like watching it because I like to just see a person just expressing themselves through, carpentry.
So he's still teaching, but he's teaching in that heart-centered mode, not necessarily what he thinks is going to be a means to an end.
Yep.
That's the difference.
And the guy's doing.
He found what lit him up, and when you're doing stuff that lights you up, it's everything. It's just like you're a perfect example.
Oh, by the way, you're getting a lot of #vibings. So anybody else is feeling her, put that #vibing in there. I got a couple more questions here before we go over to the live chat, and they've loaded me up with a lot of questions here, so we're going to make sure we go there.
I love the Q&A. I wish they were live so I could do some hot seat with them.
So you talked originally about not being comfortable with this. Let's go into the seat of an author, whether they're fiction or nonfiction. What if an author isn't comfortable with themselves or their message? What is some advice you would give to them?
Awesome question. So this happens to everybody, even some of the most popular, famous people on TV, celebrities, mega millionaires, billionaires. It happens to all of us. It's just part of human nature. So just get that that's a reality, right? We've all had conditioning. We've all got crazy stuff going on in our brains. Our lizard brain is running the show half the time, right? So we just got to get that that's just what it is to be a human being. So just like kind of go with it. Let it be. It is what it is. It is also what makes us who we are today. So we can make that conscious choice to be more of ourselves and just give ourselves permission. So to be more practical, what I would advise if somebody who's kind of coming from that place of, and this is what I see a lot of first-time authors trying to do, is they try too hard to teach and to show what they know.
Yeah.
Right. And so we know you're smart is kind of like a good editor's notes. Like, we know you're smart, like, and that's why a lot of the books that are done today are more story-based.
Yep.
Because the author allows themselves to be humbled in the telling of a story. I mean, that's why Chicken Soup for the Soul was such a popular series and just went on and on and on, had all these different writers. It became a model of really expressing and allowing stories to connect with people. And so a good author, because there's so many different genres. So really, I can't even begin to get into it, but there's a lot of research that's involved. There's obviously your knowledge. And it's one thing to go and teach an approach that you have, but it's another to research what other people are doing. And so that's what a lot of platform builders do. They go out and say, well, this is how Jim Collins does it and Good to Great. And then this is how Tony Robbins does it and blah, blah, blah. And so they use all these examples to prop up their platform, so to speak. So it's like, well, we know you're smart. We know you've studied these things, but what's your position? What's your attitude about all this? Because this is, your name's on the front of the book, right? So the last time I checked, this is about you, right? Not all these other people. So I kind of get that's a little bit of a pet peeve. But what I would do to overcome that confidence is, before you go and write the book or the next book, is I would give yourself permission to write your book and just vomit all over the page. Share your fears, your vulnerabilities, what pisses you off, what you really want to say so it's like, that silly technique where you break up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend and then you write them like a letter, like, this is why you suck, and all this stuff. Yep. And then you burn it. It's like kind of like a ritual. Well, that's kind of what this is, because it's a way for you to write something that's a full expression of who you really are, what you really think, and digging, like really connecting to that heart voice. Because it takes practice, because we're so used to stifling ourselves because we're afraid of what people will think. Yeah. Right. And so because we're afraid of being seen, that was me. It still is to some degree. I don't think it'll ever go away, quite frankly. Yeah. But, I forced myself to do that. And starting in January, I put out a newsletter that has a musings article. It's just a blog article. But I write about the pain I'm going through being a solopreneur, what I'm learning about myself, reflecting on my journey. So I feel that if I share my story, it will soothe someone else. Because that's what I heard when I wrote 14 Days, my memoir about my husband passing away from cancer, is like there were other widows reading it, or other, people who had lost a loved one due to cancer, and they read it as a love story, as opposed to, here's what you do to recover from grief. Here's how I dealt, no, it's like, here's a great story, and there's funny parts and there's sad parts. But it was like, I just kind of went, I needed to share that. It ended up being a great book and really launched me. That's what I won an award for, that book. Yeah. And it launched me into being a writer, and it was such a gift. So getting back to that person who's feeling that a little bit of insecurity, a little bit of imposter syndrome, or anything that's challenging their voice and their ability to create, I would say just give yourself permission to write your story the way you want to write it, that version of that book, or even something different. But just force yourself to bleed on the page, to just fully let it all out, and just knowing that no one else is ever going to see it. Because what'll happen is you'll discover that voice. If you really do this intentionally, and if you just give yourself permission to start exercising that muscle, because let me tell you, there is stuff going on at a energetic, spiritual level for all of us, that we are being like so many of my books were like, I feel like they were already written in my head. I just
Yeah.
needed to sit down at the computer and do this. You know what I
Yeah. That's
mean?
how I do it too.
Yeah, it's exactly like. So that's really what I would do, to start exercising that muscle and just giving yourself permission to create something that nobody else will ever see. And then you can delete it, you can burn it, you can have your own little burning party or whatever, or you may realize that it could be your best piece, and you better get that frickin' thing published.
I love it. That's so great. All right, I'm going to do something I haven't done in a long time. And it was a question I used to say to every guest when I first started this channel, gosh, 5 years ago. And I thought today would be a good time because I wanted to hear how you would weigh in, because you've worked with large companies to solopreneurs and everybody else in between. So I think that I want to ask you this question, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to ask you, the viewers, as well, what your answer is going to be to this. There's no incorrect answer. All right. I want to hear from everybody watching the live video and also watching the replay. So here we go.
You mean you won't hit the buzzer that makes this awful noise if we don't answer it right?
No wrong answer at this one. I want to hear from everybody here. All right. Given the choice, would you choose passion or profit, and why?
Did you just come up with that, or was that part of your notes?
That's part of my notes. It's right here.
Because it fits so well into what we've been talking about. Dale, you're
right.
just so good. You're just so good at what you do.
Thank you so much. So, what do you think?
Well, I will tell you this. Again, not to sound like I'm bragging, but I feel like I've married both.
Okay.
Because when I look at an intention for writing a book, like the next one I'm working on, it's tentatively titled Flying Solo. It's like a survival guide for solopreneurs, right? And I feel like I'm still evolving the content, so that's why I haven't started it yet officially. So it's still in there cooking, right? It's fermenting. And one of the things which is why I gave that practical example, is to just allow yourself to just vomit on the page. And so that's why a lot of these musing articles, I'm going to go back to them and extract a lot of what's there and have that be part of this book. And so I would say that flying solo is, when I hear profit play versus passion play, I think profit from the standpoint of what will it do to help me build my platform/business. That's kind of how I'm hearing it. I'm not hearing profit as in how much money can I make from this. I want to distinguish that first before I keep going. And so for me, it's more like this is in the lane I'm in now. So I think about that from a niche business standpoint, because, and this is what's evolved in my business over time is, like when I started my podcast, Simplify and Multiply, I wanted it to be for solopreneurs. And I kind of coined the term lifestyle solopreneur, which is somebody who, isn't about building this mega business with lots of money, but it's not a side hustle either. It's a full-time thing, but it affords them the lifestyle that they want without all the pressures, the drawback, the management of people and all these systems and operations, but it's something they can really enjoy. And a lot of this is mirroring, just how I run my business and how I run my life and what I see a lot of my clients wanting. Like I work with a lot of keynote speakers that are, let's say they're in their late 50s, 60s, and they've still got a lot of life left in them. They're ready to keep going, but they're tired of traveling. They're tired of the rat race. They're tired of all not working, and just really finding that one thing that they love to do in their business and just giving themselves permission to do just that. They've earned it. They've had 30, 40 years of doing it, and they've earned their chops. They've earned their audience, right? So you don't have to keep the pace up. You can actually start doing something that's more passion-centered. And that's why, again, a lot of this personal branding has inspired me to help people this way, because many of those clients are mine and came to me with those requests, right? So when I look at passion versus profit, honestly, I believe if you fulfill on your passion, the profit will come.
I love it. Kelly already called this. She said, you guys are going to go over. And I'm like, nah, we're going to be fine.
I know. I just saw the time and I was like,
it's about
well,
5 minutes.
I'm good. I'm good if you are. I don't know if you want to
I'm okay.
burden your audience with more jibber jabber from us.
Before we do get over to the live Q&A, of course, I want to ask you one last question. How can viewers get in touch with you?
Oh, I'm telling you what, it's easy as cake. I want you to sign up for my Monday Motivators because it has a link to my latest weekly YouTube video.
Okay.
It has a link to my upcoming free events. Yes, I do free training events that have hot seats and training. They're so much fun. And I also, and they're like they're free. Like that
no
commercial
cash.
we're seeing on TV, right? It also has a link to my latest heart vulnerable solopreneur, musings of a solopreneur article. And it also has a link to my latest podcast and any other cool thing I'm doing. I'm trying to push myself to be more, what's Terry doing? Not that I'm going to show you what I had for breakfast kind of thing, but it's much more personal, much more, here's Terry, drum roll, here she comes. And so that's called Monday Motivators. I have a 90-minute challenge that will help you boost your confidence. It'll help you align with your mission and what gets you excited and help you build your 1000% you. So where you go do that is at pappyclub.com. That's PAPPYCLUB.com. And that's everything 1000% Terry Pappy. And I would love to have you as a subscriber.
That'd be so fantastic, folks. And also, while she's plugging that, I'm going to plug something else. YouTubeterry.com. Go over to her YouTube channel right now and subscribe. Be part of her first 1,000 subscribers. You will thank me. She is a gem. She's a rock star. I'm going to come on over here to the chat, and I want to give a what's up to a lot of people. Oh my gosh, the passion versus profit thing. Keep them coming, guys. I love seeing it whenever the chat is blowing up. Allison P., thank you very much for joining in. Igor, great to see you, buddy. Gardens of Blessings TV, thank you so much for being a channel member, Gardens of Blessings TV. I appreciate that. I'm going to try to hit the questions if you want to load me up with them again because there's a lot of chat here. I'm going to try to keep things kind of dialed in based on our conversation today. So if there is some of those ones right there, I notice there's one about copyright, but I'm kind of like, we'll save that for a copyright video. Let's see here. Fleischman Media. It was funny. I was talking about Anthony Fleischman and he shows up. That's how you do it. You say his name at least once, he'll show up. Gold MMO King, great to see you joining me here. He was over on with Twitch with me there. Miss Finance, great to see you join us here. Venus 7, great to have you here. I'm preparing to self-publish my first poetry collection. Any advice on finding editors? What's some advice that you could give, Terry? Because I know that you've already done a good handful of books already.
Yeah. I have a lot of different resources. Poetry editors are a different breed altogether because poetry's poetry.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if you're putting poetry down, then I would slam it down and just let it be itself. But I would also, just check your resources, your network for editors who specialize in poetry editing. Just throw out there on LinkedIn or on any of your social channels where you're having a strong presence, have a nice audience. And what it'll also do is it'll draw attention to the fact that, oh, you're doing poetry, tell me more. And then you can start sharing about why you're doing it and what poet inspired you and what's one of your favorite poems and just talking about how your process works. These are all things as an author that you can bring into building your 1000% because believe me, people who like an author want to know what's behind the curtain. They want to know the process. They want to know what inspired you. And as you're writing, remember how I said about, you don't have to prove like you're smart so much. You just need to just let it be. One of the most important things I learned as a writer is that because I worked too hard to like set the scene or, teach or get in that kind of not parental mode, but parental mode for all intents and purposes is, and a fellow writer told me this, and he was reading some of my stuff and he put it down and he looked at me, he said, Terry, he says, you have to let the reader come to their own conclusion. And when you do that, you bring them in with you as opposed to you talking at them. So big difference. So when you're writing, if you're feeling that as you're writing, that audience, that reader is with you, you can have conversations with them. You can just sit there and say, what would you think, what would my character do next? And Do you think that this is an important story to you? And why would, so you can play those you can even do some journaling along with your writing to kind of have that conversation. I wrote one fiction book and I created all these characters, and I would have dialogues with them because I wanted to get to know who they were. And it was the coolest process. But when it comes to poetry, because poetry is truly an art form in and of itself, I would just go with what you put down. All you got to do is listen to any song, read any lyric, and you can see, like, well, that's not proper grammar. It's poetry.
Yep. It's how you're supposed to express yourself. I've got a good one here from Nemesis73. Writing tames my darkness. It relieves the pressure in my mind. The world is my psychologist, and my books are me laying on the sofa unloading my mind. That is like the quotable quote for the day.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a poem right there.
Andy Lyons, speak of the devil, and she shows up. Like literally, the two of us were talking about her, and nothing bad. Right during like the warm up, you and I were chatting. We were like talking about Andy. Andy shows up.
Well, that's because we have this mutual love fest going on with that woman.
That's good. That's good. So, and I'll be talking about Andy before we get disconnected today. Anyways, Wellness Universe, great to see you join. Kevin McGuire, great to see you have you here. Dragos, IBM BPM developer. This seems similar to Simon Sinek's idea of start with why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. It's like if people really want to hear your opinion, they'll ask your opinion. You don't give them okay, here's all these other people's opinion, and that supports my opinion. No, that's somebody who doesn't really believe in themselves, right? Or they need this justification, that all these other people have proven that this is the right way to do it. And here's, this is why I do it this way. No, come up with your own stuff. We need new stuff.
New stuff is good. Walter Wyburn, great to see you join us here. Here we go. All right, we got another question. This one comes from Igor. Could you ask her to name 3 nemesis of a successful writer? Also want to hear your opinion too, Dale. I'm going to let Terry weigh in on this one. Who are some of the 3 nemesises of Nemesi? Nemesises? How do you say that? How is the plural of nemesis?
So let me rephrase. So nemesis meaning what are the like top challenges that a writer faces in order to get complete with their book?
That seems about right. Yeah.
Okay, because nemesis can be interpreted a lot of different ways. So I want to make sure that I address this as best I can. So the first and most evil nemesis of a writer is their own self-doubt.
Yep.
Just not trusting the fact that this book is already written, and the act of bringing it out into reality is how it's created for reality, right? So it's how it's manifested. And when you trust that and stop, like trying to make it be something like that in order to, I was talking about, then you really can allow that writer to come forward.
All right, that was one. So you got 2 more to go.
That's the first one, right? So self-doubt is the first one. The second one, I would say, is editing while you're writing.
Ooh, yes. Inner editors not allowed in on the writing process.
Yeah. So not only will it ruin the pureness of what's being, brought out from inside of you, but it will slow down the process of you getting it done.
Yep.
And it's the same thing as self-doubt and second guessing yourself, because you'll like on the page, and then you'll go back and like, I used to do this, right? Because I was just kind of like such a perfectionist, and I wanted to have it really good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, Terry, just let it out. Get the first draft done. Just do the first pass and just let it all out, right? And then you can go back and then you can rework it. And when I started doing that, I realized that there were things that I missed or things that I wanted to expand on. Like I just glazed over that. I need to go back and I need to enrich that and tell more of that story, or really be more honest, right? Because there's still an editor that's going on in there as it's trying to filter some of that stuff coming out, right? And then the third nemesis, I would say, is telling other people what you're working on. And what I mean by that is when you start, like you're super excited. Oh my God, I'm writing this new book, right? Yay, yay, so excited, writing a new book, yay. This is what it's about. Blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, you're starting to get input from how you express
Starts
what
to
it is
soil
you're
it.
working on. And what that does is that influences you, and then you start doubting yourself. So then it starts to kick into gear, that nemesis number one. And whether it's somebody who's trying to be supportive, which all of our friends and family are always trying to be super supportive, and we really want to just kill them because they're raining on our parade, right?
Yep.
So what we want to do is you want to keep it like a little secret. And I'm not saying you know, don't say a word about it. Say, I'm working on a book and I'm super excited about it. Well, can you tell me about it? Not yet, but it's going to be good. So you build the anticipation for yourself and for your audience. And, you know, once the book gets to a certain point, then you can start, you know, kind of maybe teasing some things to start get interest going and things like that. But that's kind of more about your launch and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you're doing something like that, or you're just creating it, then just create it, just make it. So those are the three things that off the top of my head were the issues for me as a writer.
I love it. There's no reason I should even be able to soil that. I say for inner editor, I want to add this. I love analogies, and this helps people understand it a little bit better. The reason that you need to get your first draft out and not let it be tainted or soiled by anyone, or even that monkey mind of yours, is you just got to write it out, get it done. The inner editor is like a backseat driver that's not welcome. And when you get that backseat driver telling you all these directions, you probably get all antsy, you get aggravated, you become an aggressive driver, and you start to become something that is not you. So you just don't let that person along with the ride. And so the inner editor, I know it's easier said than done, but people have watched me do live sprints and watched, like, very often, anytime I'm typically hitting the backspace or the delete because I had a typo of some sort. And I need to break that. But even then, like, I don't go back and delete passages. I'm like, it's days, because I sort that out in the editing process when the inner editor is allowed to go at the wheel. So yeah, inner editors like that backseat driver.
Yeah,
okay.
You know what it's like, Dale? It's like hitting a speed bump.
Yep.
When you're in the flow and you see the typo, or most word processing today, they'll fix it as you go, or you can set settings that'll fix it as you go. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. But it takes practice to train yourself out of that habit, right? Because we're always trying to do that in an email or a proposal or whatever. But it's like a speed bump. It interrupts the flow. So make everything you're about when you're doing that kind of download to be allowing the flow of those ideas. And give yourself permission to not, if the flow ain't there, then go out and for a walk, or go have a cup of coffee, or just give yourself a pass for the day or whatever, because sometimes we get into a writing schedule because we want to get it done. So we get a little rigid, but sometimes the flow's not there. It's such a creative process.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm going to keep rolling through here. IBM BPM developer says, solopreneuring makes 9 to 5 look like a vacation. Mad respect for making it happening on your own.
Thank you.
I think that was a shout out to you.
Yes,
Walter Wyburn, what's going on? I don't know if I shouted you out yet. Walter, it's always great to see you join us here. Mojo, glad to see you. You both came in late, but that's okay. There's always the replay. Let's see here. I'm going to keep scrolling through. And I want to make a big shout out to Miss Finance. I see there, MMO King. Okay, I'm seeing like the cast and crew. By the way, we have nearly 40 people watching. So folks, if you are enjoying today's broadcast, please hit that like right there and go over to YouTubeterry.com and hit subscribe on her channel. Good evening from Hull in the UK. John Green, thank you so much for joining us from the UK. I see we got a couple new subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing. Leo's Art, it's great to see you, Leo's Art. Creation for me, so it's not on your choice. I think that was probably for passion. I see a lot of people are talking passion and profit. BPM Geek says, what is the exact profit number? It's just not so much a measurable thing as when I was asking passion versus profit. So you just got to kind of think to yourself, do I want the passion? Do I want the profit? So me, I'm going
to interrupt you, Dale. Where the profit is?
Mm-hmm.
The profit is in a happy creator, because when you're happy, you're attracting all the wonderful things you want in your life. You're living the joyful life of an expressive creator. You're getting your ideas out into the world. You're having an impact. You have to trust that no matter what you create, no matter how somebody says it's terrible or how somebody says it's great, this is what I always said to myself, from the standpoint of I'll feel like I've done something good for me, it's like, if I touch one person with this creation, my job's done. I'm happy. Anything else is icing on the cake. And that just like gave me so much more like, oh, relief that I didn't have to like meet these measures. And, you know, like I said, if you want to make money, go buy real estate. Don't try to self-publish and, you know, earn a living, because it's tough and there is not a lot of money in it. Now, there are techniques and approaches that you can take toward your writing that can be a substantial revenue source, but it shouldn't be the only source, right? So yeah. I'll just leave it at that.
Awesome. Fantastic. Igor's trying to push me for the answer to his three-thing topic. Igor, what I would say is come over and join me on my Twitch broadcasts every Monday and Thursday. So this is actually one of the last live broadcasts on here for a while here. Actually, Terry, you're starting to round out things. Again, how can viewers get in touch with you?
Yeah, just head over to pappyclub.com, which is right there. Yep. And that is where all my 1000% you happens. Sign up for Monday Motivators, because you'll get links to all my good stuff. You won't have to try to traipse all over the world to try to find it. It will come right to you, including a very special weekly challenge that'll kick off that week and a great start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking your time with me today here, Terry. And I'm going to send you back over to the green room while I go ahead and chat with the live viewers here. Hey, so what we're going to do is go over and take a look over at Andy Lyons. She talked a little bit about branding on this last video interview that I had. And also, if you already saw that interview or you're not interested in it, you want to go ahead and take a look at this next video over here or subscribe to